I mean, you can call somebody your brother, but brotherhood is something else.
Oh, I like that's beautiful. How you just said that, man. For real, for real. And that what you just said, you got to put that on YouTube and maybe even make it a clip, because that's beautiful. I haven't heard too many people explain it like what you just said.
Well, I'm going to go into that. As a matter of fact, let's spend some time on that. You want to go into that?
Yeah. That's why I said we can go in, because that's something that people need to know.
Okay. Because see, it's easy for even a blood brother, okay, to call you, this is my brother. It's like my sister would tell somebody, if they saw me, she would say, that's my brother. But how do you treat him? You know, you don't have a brother and sisterhood going on between you two. Like Angel calls me Brother David. But see, that's like the Christians saying Jesus Christ.
Right.
You know, so they say Christ like Christ is his last name. Christ is his title.
Yep.
You know, this is what I was telling my friend Bernard Conley when I finally talked to him, because he said Jesus Christ. I said, why do y'all say his name like Christ is his last name? I said, Christ is his title. He is the fulfiller. He is your Messiah. So that's what you have to announce what he is to the world. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, you're supposed to say Jesus the Christ.
Right.
Not Jesus Christ.
And another way of saying his name, or it really means it's the anointed Savior. So it's like you rob this, just emphasizing on what you do. It's the title. It's not
Absolutely.
Not really.
Yeah, because that's what Christ means, the anointed one.
Yeah.
You know, so people call you, call me Brother David, but how do you treat him? You know, you put that brother before his name because it's common to call me Brother David. And then he'll put an initial on the BD. You see? It doesn't mean anything to you. When you turn it into a initial thing, you're telling this person that it really doesn't mean anything. Well, you can play with it like that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
See, I can call you Brother Josh, and you know that I mean that.
Right.
Because when I say Brother Josh, there's a love and affection and compassion present when I say it. And can't nobody tell me otherwise, because when I say it, that's what I'm feeling. I really mean that.
Right.
You know, anytime I tell my mother, you have another son who lives in Texas that you have not yet met. When I say Brother Josh, you better believe that I mean that.
Right.
You know, because there's a brotherhood going on between us. There's love, compassion, consideration, caring. You know, even when I was having those suicide fits, you didn't say, oh, well, you're young, you know how Yah feels about that.
Yeah.
You know, that was Angel's attitude. Like, Yah don't feel too good, so it's up to you, Brother David. You know what I'm saying? And, because the scriptures speak against that. So he's still saying, do it if you want, but religiously it's wrong.
Right.
See, that's not brotherhood. That's not brotherhood at all. Now, even right now, if Angel was to call me and say, BD, I'm having suicidal thoughts, and I'm feeling like I want to take my own life, I would ask him, what's going on? To hell with what we just been through, to hell with what me cutting you off and all of that. That doesn't mean anything. What's going on with you? I wouldn't quote scriptures. I wouldn't tell him he's going to hell. Let's go into why you're feeling like that. Let's identify it. Let's get back to your right mind. That's what that's about. That's brotherhood.
Right.
See, brotherhood, that's a moving and living thing. A brotherhood is a manifestation of how you treat one another, how you talk to one another. It's a living thing. It's love, it's compassion, it's consideration. It's doing things for one another. It's action. You know, this is what the black community don't understand.
Right.
You know, you come up to somebody you don't even know on the street, hey bro, how you doing? I used to always tell them, what makes me your brother? Because I'm black, that doesn't mean anything.
No.
And so, as time went on, I found myself at work, and my memory started going over some of the things I would hear him preach about. And I could actually hear this man's voice in my mind as I was working. And because of that, I started missing God. And I wanted to hear some more of his teachings, but the conflict within me was still knowing that this man is a false prophet. And so it grieved me. And so one night, unannounced, I believe it was close to 3 o'clock in the morning, I drove over to Elder Pastor Lott's house. And I just pulled up in front of his home. And I just sat there. And I was thinking, it was improper to even come there, unannounced. But I sat in front of his house for at least 45 minutes. And suddenly, my cell phone rang. I answered it, and it was Pastor Lott. He said, Brother David, are you going to come in, or are you just going to sit out there all night? And I didn't answer. He said, come on in, brother. And so I got up, and he invited me in. And of course, I was properly dressed because I wouldn't go nowhere near Elder Lott unless I was properly dressed, properly groomed, and everything. He answered the door and he let me in. When I walked in, I looked to the side and his fireplace was burning. So he was obviously watching me, and he turned on his fireplace. And when I came in, he said, would you like something to drink? He said, I have cranberry juice, I have apple juice, or coffee. He said, which would you prefer? And so I asked him, you know, I told him that I would like some cranberry juice because I have this fetish for cranberry juice. And so he went and he got me a glass of cranberry juice. And as he was walking towards me with the glass of cranberry juice, he said, sit down, brother, why are you standing up? Standing up. I said, I'm not going to sit down until you sit down, sir. And he just started laughing. He gave me the cranberry juice. He sat down in his comforter. And I took a drink of the cranberry juice, and he saw that I was looking over at the fire. And he didn't say anything. And so I think it was like 2 minutes. And he said, what's troubling you? son. And I just started tearing up. And so I was telling him, I'm very deep into this. As you said, that was not a good thing, and you told me that this would happen to me. And he said, right. And I told him, I don't know how to get out of it. And he said, yes, you do. He said, but it's not time. He said, your lesson is not complete yet. He said, it's not time yet. He said, this is a journey that you're going to have to go through in order to learn a person like this. He said, I don't see any other brothers out here in the church going through this. He said they come there and they record him, and that's it. But they never speak to him. He said, you are right there. You're experiencing this lesson. You're experiencing this. And so, as we talked, he was telling me that what you're going through right now is very important. It's very profound. And you have to go through this. For all of us. He said, because you're going to talk about this one day. And he said that you have to go through this. He said, the way that you feel, he said, from my vantage point, he said, I think that your closeness and care for this man is based upon the care and closeness that you didn't receive from your father, whom is a pastor. He said, and I've watched you ever since I've known you, Brother David. And he said, you want to do the work so bad. He said, sometimes you compromise your own moral principles in order to do that. He said, and that puts you in a state of confusion as you are right now. He said, but confusion is only temporary until you learn. He said, you have this strong desire to want to be used for something. And he said, even that can be dangerous. He said, because you put yourself in a very vulnerable position to where your strong willingness to be used for the sake of the gospel, he said, you leave yourself vulnerable to be manipulated and used by men as such. He said, that is why. He said, you recall when I asked you, why are you there? And you told me, Brother David, that you didn't know. He said, you won't know from him or any of them. He said, you will only know when you start looking within at your own pain and at your own desires and at your own lust and want to be used for something. He said, you have a lust of wanting to be used. And he said, and you know, lust is never a good characteristic, because when you're lusting for something and when you're desiring something, he said the dual component of desire will forever be pain. The dual component for lust will forever be confusion and pain. He said, you're there because there's a lot of things going on inside of you. that you have to get a grip on. Now, he said, there's no doubt that this man and what he's doing is evil by moral standards and by the teachings of Yeshua. He warned all of us about men as such. You're in this. He said, and only you can get yourself out. The moment you look inside and be completely honest to yourself, brother Lee, it's the only way that you're gonna get out. He said, you already know what to do. So open up your eyes, look inside and be honest with yourself. Be completely honest with yourself. He said, I knew that I would see you again. And I knew that you would keep your word. He said, so when I looked outside, while I came downstairs to get some water, I saw you sitting out there. He said, I came downstairs, I lit the fireplace, and I sat by the window, and I watched you sit in your car. And he said, the moment I saw the tears in your eyes, I said to myself, it's time. And so that's when I called you. Because I knew that you were at a breaking point and you needed guidance. And so that's why you're here. And that is why I'm seeing you again. And so I just sat there and I drunk in everything that he said. He said, I don't need to advise you on what to do. He said, you already know what you need to do. He said, you already know. He said, but I will sit here with you for as long as you need me to. He said, because I'm your brother in Christ. He said, and I love all those who love the brother. I love all of those who love the brother. And so I sat there and I looked over at this man. And I've never seen such a beautiful human being. He didn't have to let me in. He didn't have to say those things to me. But all of that was love. And it was some things that I really needed to hear at that time. Because I was in too deep to not understand it. You know, I mean, it's like someone falling inside of a pool that is 6 to 10 feet deep. And they're sinking. And the reason why they're drowning is because they don't have the knowledge of how to swim. And that's how I was feeling. I was feeling like I was drowning. And so we sat there and we talked for another 5 minutes. And after which, he looked over at me and he smiled. He said, are you okay now, brother? He looked at me like this. You okay now, brother? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so he stood up, did like this, And he looked at me in the eyes and he was shaking my arms like this. He said, now, go forward and learn of this experience. He said, and don't seek to harm no one. He said, because you're not there to harm anyone. In regards to maturity and intelligence and self-control and going beyond what is considered self-control, which implies a person involving their self in the control factor of self. And what is meant by that is that there are levels of the internal being when it comes to self-control. See, when you are consistently in the state of controlling self, you're in conflict. Even though you're able to maintain what people call the balance of the dual. It's the dual. And the only way that these duals can coexist, wisdom and intelligence has to be in the middle, in causing these two entities, the good and the bad, the dual, to coexist together in a humble state of tolerance. However, they're still in conflict. And therefore, you're still in conflict because you're still trying to maintain self-control, which is the middle, the wisdom and the intelligence in terms of maintaining these two to exist together for the sake of, I would say for the sake of self-preservation and the preservation of those in whom you're communicating with and dealing with in your environment. However, when you allow yourself to mature past the thoughts of, oh, I would not be able to take seeing my kid's mother with another man, is because of the maturity, the level of maturity. That's what I'm trying to say. Has it reached to the point of where you're able to let go of that type of mentality? And therefore, when you choose to let go of that type of mentality, that is a beautiful form of death. And it's the evidence that you have healed from whatever happened between you and that other person. And by you're able to let go of that, as time goes on, the maturity level of you increases, and therefore the Creator is able to pour more wisdom, more insight, and more enlightenment into you, so that when time comes of when your son's mother meets someone else, you are at a state to where you're no longer in conflict. I don't think I would be able to take seeing her with someone else. You have died to that. And you're now on a spiritual level of maturity to where when you do meet him, you're able to greet him as a friend. So to a lot of you who did not understand that, and even to some of you who somewhat attacked me in having that type of environment around my sons by allowing him to come there. I'm hoping that explains the reason why I decided to do so. I was going to do an entire video relating to my previous video on Brother Kenyon Collins in terms of explaining exactly what brotherhood is, but I thought of the first two videos that I put on. They also talk about the principle of brotherhood and the function of brotherhood and the spirit in which guides brotherhood. And as I said before, it's easy for we to call ourselves brother, but that's just the verbalization of it. You can call anybody brother, but brotherhood is based upon, as the previous video said, love, compassion, and it's the doing, it's the action, it's a living thing. I recall back in the 70s when I used to walk down the street with my uncles. It's like when we were going to the grocery stores. I recall one particular day I was walking down the street with my Uncle Kevin, rest in peace, and we were going to a store that used to reside on 87th Street in Chicago, 87 and King Drive. It was a grocery store called Food Basket. And so as we were walking down the street, there was a couple of brothers that was walking towards us. And unlike today, what I noticed is when my Uncle Kevin came in contact with these brothers, what I noticed was this pause in between my Uncle Kevin and the brothers that were coming towards us. And everybody put their hand out, they shook each other's hand and they said, "Soul brother number one," and they shook, there was a handshake that was a trend back in those days. And they say, "Soul brother number one," and they walked their way and we walked ours. And I remember looking up at my Uncle Kevin, I'm like, because I don't remember seeing these two particular brothers around my Uncle Kevin. And so I asked my Uncle Kevin, I said, "Do you know them?" And he said, "No." He said, we don't have to know one another. He said, we all know that we're brothers and we have to acknowledge that. He said it's equivalent to a demonstration of love and respect and therefore peace between us as a family. And so, he said, and so it's about brotherhood. That was the first time I heard someone verbalize the word brotherhood. And so as we went into Food Basket and we got what our what my great grandmother needed, I went for a walk and I'm like, that whole experience really moved me, And so to me, that demonstration of complete strangers in terms of not having the knowledge and experience of knowing one another, it was one primary principle in between Black men back in those days, so where we actually knew one another. Now, a lot of people can say it was because of the struggle that we all as Black men go through. And for some reason, we've forgotten that. we've forgotten that going into the early and mid 80s, and that was misplaced along after the effects of drugs and alcohol and the associations of different distinctions of gang violence and gangs and everything like that. But so this is why I was always saying in that I saw a moral decline starting to develop, starting in 1974 and onward. So when you go into the 80s, you don't see things like that now. It seems like the whole gang sign stuff have replaced the soul brother number one, handshakes and all of that. They used to stop, they used to do all these, different things. And I used to love to see that between black men. And then you go forward into time, and it just seems like because of the effects of the environment, the lack of opportunity, the drugs, the alcohol, and how the environment was contaminated by all of those things, in which contaminated our personalities and our the way that we saw one another. And so coming up in that type of environment in Chicago and seeing all of these things at their prime, and then your heart breaking as time goes on, because you see those things start to diminish. You start seeing brothers who once very much loved one another are starting to evolve into a hatred for one another because everyone's in pain. And so when we're in pain, we, due to the fact, simply because we are all struggling together, the whole dual component of unity is disunity. And therefore, the dual component is love. Of love is hatred. And so when that, within that struggle, hatred had seemed to birth in between black men. And due to the fact that each and every one of us didn't have a plan, we took our frustrations out on one another and we filled up the graveyards in Chicago. And as time went on, all of these things were said, as I mentioned before, by the younger versions of a Tupac Shakur and Eazy-E and all of that. And these brothers put it to music, and they started telling the world what's going on in the hood. And a whole lot of people were upset at the music, but all at the same time, these young men were just telling you what they experienced. So if you want to destroy hip hop, then clean up the environment. This is what I was telling the elders. You don't like hip hop? Accept the fact that you helped create this environment in which gave birth to hip hop. Now, if you want to help people like Eazy-E or a Ice Cube or Tupac Shakur or a Public Enemy and all of those guys in the past that actually cared about the status, the moral status of the community, then help them clean it up. Start listening to these men, because they are out there and they see these things. And so when they put it to music, because through the years, we've had people like Brother Malcolm, Brother Dr. King. We still have a very vibrant and living Louis Farrakhan. God bless you, Minister. Speaking these things. But during those years, speaking, we're so caught up in our pains that just simply speaking, it just wasn't cutting it. And so here's these young people putting those speeches, you might as well say, to music, because there was a lot of times to where I would hear Minister Farrakhan's voice in Ice Cube music, and so I used to also hear a lot of young men question me, who is that speaking in that Ice Cube? I would tell them, that's Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I would point them in the direction of where they can find Minister Louis Farrakhan's footage to listen to. Now, once they found Minister Louis Farrakhan's footage, they would either take it in and become a better young man, or they would go down to the Nation of Islam itself and become better young men. So there's always an option. There's always an option. I mean, that's just like the night that I was really confused and everything. And Pastor Lott, who was still with us, God bless you, Pastor Lott, he counseled me. He counseled me. He didn't condemn me with scriptures and what's going to happen in this and all of that. He talked to me as a brother because, as he said, he loves the brotherhood. And brotherhood is not condemning someone. Brotherhood is counseling that person. Because believe me, when a person is speaking the language of suicide, they already know that suicide is, by way of scripture, not the right thing to do. They already know that. But what it is that they're giving you a sign of that they've gotten to the point to where they don't see any light that they can turn to in order to help them change what is ruling them currently on the inside. And if you're not able to do that with someone without condemning them because of what the scripture said, then you ain't nobody's brother. You really don't know what brotherhood is. And if you're in the body claiming to know what brotherhood is, but the only thing you can do is condemn people, then you're really not, you're nobody's brother. The only thing that you're looking for are followers. You want people to follow you. And if you want people to follow behind you, then you're not a part of the brotherhood, because no one is greater than the next. No one is greater than the next. And so brotherhood, as those videos said before you, is a living, moving thing. And I understood that when Brother Kenyon needed some help. I understood that when Brother Kenyon needed someone to talk to. I understood that when he needed some counseling. I understood that when he needed an open ear from a man who opened up his heart to him. And as he opened up his heart to me, by opening up to me and telling me the real core of his pain, the real core of his pain, to the degree that it broke this big man down to tears. That's why I say we became brothers from that conversation, because there was no ego involved. I don't want this man to see me cry. It's not about what I see. It's about the release and the honesty between you and the other person. That's brotherhood. And if someone can't go to you and totally open up to you, if they're not able to do that, don't open up your mouth and ever call them brother, because you're not. So when it all boils down to it, I don't want this video to be long, because the other was long enough. So brotherhood, it's not verbally saying that a person is your brother. What cultivates you and that other person to being brothers is having that personal time with one another, struggling through something, helping one another out without any limits, no matter who was saying, oh, this person is using you, and oh, you're he ain't doing nothing but using you. And the reason why that is able to influence you against anyone who you call brother, because you don't know what brotherhood is. You have no idea what brotherhood is. There's not a person on this planet that can tell me anything about my brother Josh, who lives in Texas. There's no one on the planet that can tell me anything about Pastor Lot, because those are my brothers. There's no one who can tell me anything against my half-brother, Terrell Cancer. You can't tell me anything about that man. You know? You can't tell me anything about him. And you can never turn me against these men. I don't care what your situation is or what your condition is. See, brotherhood is unlimited. Brotherhood is sacred. And what makes brotherhood sacred is that there are no foreseen preconditions that you could be able to see forth and say, nah, I can't do that. You know, you my brother, but there is no but. Okay? Because when it comes to brotherhood, there are no limitations, because this is what the government saw as well. And this is the reason why, another reason why, the drugs went into the community, the liquor went into the community, everything, prostitution, all of those things. You know, it destroyed black men in terms of what the brotherhood was. And all of a sudden, instead of walking past one another, showing each other love and respect and honor, you know, shaking each other's hands, now we walk past each other on the street and we moon mug, you know, we mean mugging one another. We always expect the worst from one another. And if you're around someone who you verbally say is your brother, but you're always expecting the worst from him, then you just one of them street Negroes, you know. And you can't be anybody's brother if that's where your head is, you know. But with all of that being said, I'm going to cut this short. But you know, there was a lot of people who at first didn't understand my my whole take on brotherhood, and the reason why everything went so well between me and Brother Kenyon is because I understood what brotherhood is, and I still understand what brotherhood is, and I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything that I learned from it, and I wouldn't change the experience at all, because it all worked out beautifully, and I learned a whole lot from it, and so did he. So with all that being said, everyone have a good night, and please stay human. Peace.